and a family in Denmark. I mean, I imagine if you had a secret family, what a lovely place to keep them.
How I handle my mental health, not always great, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I certainly have my own little rituals and stay grounded and kind of keep my mind from spinning out of control. But sometimes I'm really good at it, and sometimes I'm not. But yeah, I do a lot.
Hi friends, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. Today, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's attorney sat in a court and used an attorney to berate, defame, and try to achieve through their very captive audience a narrative that Justin Baldoni and his team are dangerous human beings. The narrative, which was deeply troubling, at times very disturbing, and seemed to be a deflective technique, a ruse where they had the press on the phone and a way to drive home a narrative because they're losing the narrative in the public. And so after today's hearing, what they got were headlines implicating Justin Baldoni and his team as being dangerous, trying to sell their information, wanting to weaponize the information they get through Discovery to leak it because it has a price in the press. It's valuable PR to them. There's a captive audience, and there's people on that side that would be willing to sell it to the highest bidder. But not only that, they wanted us to believe that Justin Baldoni and his team are dangerous. What's been not lost on me is that throughout this coverage in the media is that very few major outlets are actually willing to dig into the case that Justin Baldoni has laid out against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Instead, these outlets like the LA Times, the New York Times, People Magazine, and these other than Hollywood Reporter in the Daily Mail are all playing into this concept that happens in the world of reporting, that if you criticize someone like Ryan Reynolds, you lose access to him. You lose access to interviewing him. You'll lose access to the studios he's around. He can blacklist you from interviewing other people. If you post critical things about him, you'll lose access to Blake. The media courts Ryan and Blake way more than they court Justin Baldoni. Ryan and Blake are more valuable to them, and therefore you'll have a harder time finding negative press about them. The only way you will ever find negative press about them is if one of them were to become arrested, because they have played the long game when it comes to narcissism. They've carefully crafted this persona that's not real. It's based on this image that doesn't exist. They admitted today in court that if information was obtained through communications between Blake or Ryan and their celebrity friends, it could be so detrimental to their reputations that their careers would be irreparably harmed. If you are someone who has a brand and a reputation that isn't based on who you are, anything you say privately would ruin your brand. And this is where we're going to go here. The smoke and mirror of celebrity. Who are they trying to protect today? I can think of one person in particular, Taylor Swift. I don't know how involved Taylor Swift is in this overall dispute. We know that Taylor Swift was at the penthouse the night that they tried to get Baldoni on board with Ryan's version of the rooftop scene. We know that Taylor Swift's music was used in the film. That's not an easy thing to do. And this was not a high budget production. This was an indie film that ended up getting picked up by Sony Distribution. Sony was the distributor. They were not the studio that made the film. Wayfair made the film. So how is it that Miss Taylor Swift lent her composer, lent her music, and was involved in conversations about the rooftop scene, but somehow has avoided any sort of scrutiny publicly and has tried to distance herself from Blake and Ryan? The urgency for which they were arguing about protecting third parties coincides with the fact that earlier this week, a source that is connected to the legal team on Baldoni's side mentioned that the first round of subpoenas have gone out, that there are people on the list for witnesses that have been sought out by his team, individuals that will be eventually brought in, likely for depositions, and have to produce discovery. One of those people was Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift's name was in an article this week. They referenced that in court. They did not mention her name. They didn't say it was Taylor, but they said that this week someone in the legal team spoke to the Daily Mail and gave them information about witnesses and subpoenas. Now, the irony here is that when Blake's team did subpoenas for the records, for phone records, they made a public statement about it. They publicly leaked that they had subpoenaed for phone records, and they were all over it. And then they were taunting his side when he had to then go to the court and ask them to quash it because it was overbroad and invasive, and he was invading their privacy. This protective order is the third time in as many months that Blake and Ryan have attempted to silence and intimidate this proceeding. They attempted to get a gag order, which was denied. They attempted to invade the privacy by obtaining 2 years of phone records and records of non-parties. And then now they're trying to get a overbroad and ridiculous protective order to protect Taylor Swift's communications with Blake. Their request for an order of protection had very little to do with third parties in their order to the court, in their request to the court. But their argument to the court today was all about the elusive third party that is Taylor Swift. They are freaking out because it's publicly known now that Taylor will be likely deposed and have to produce discovery. The last thing that Mrs. America's sweetheart would want is to be in the middle of a case where there are accusations of extortion, threats, and bullying, harassment, and theft. The last thing Miss America's sweetheart would want to be known for is helping her friends hijack a film through bullying and threats and extortion. They are desperate to keep her communication private so that Taylor's reputation isn't harmed. What's interesting here is that they're seeking this protective order where and for people for discovery that hasn't even been requested, for things that they don't even know that they have. They are seeking this preventative protective order before they even get into discovery. They have 4 or 5 months still, or 6 months to produce discovery. All of this is so premature. And that's again why it's very performative. But Taylor is the key here. And they are scrambling because they don't want anyone to know what her and Taylor did or how they did this. Taylor Swift has a PR agent, Tree, who can make Taylor appear to be better than who she is. But don't be disillusioned. And I'm not trying to bag on Taylor, but Taylor is not a perfect person and nobody is America's sweetheart. And when you create a brand that you are America's sweetheart, you will never live up to that expectation. There have been a zillion America's sweethearts before Taylor. There will be a million after. And almost every America's sweetheart falls because no one can be a sweetheart. Ryan and Blake are terrified of Taylor and that information coming out because it will show a side of Hollywood that is so conniving, disgusting, exploitative, and it'll prove to what a lot of us already know that people in this industry chew people up and spit them out and stomp on the little guys to stay elevated. Taylor Swift is publicly distancing herself from Blake, and she has not said one word to defend Blake. And this is a woman that sued a man for sexual harassment for touching her butt for $1 when he sued her for defamation, and she countersued him. And she won after years. She publicly supported Kesha when she came out against her producer. She has not been someone to shy away from controversy, but in this case, she is silent. And silence speaks volumes when you're Taylor Swift. Blake Lively allowed Taylor Swift, a woman that she's only known like 10 years tops, they became friends in 2015, to be the godmother to 3 of her children. when she actually has sisters and family and friends that she's no longer that could have been the godmother. It's like they were trying to find a way to get Taylor attached to them in a familial way. What better way than being a godmother? It's manipulative, it's social climbing, and it's Hollywood. So they are desperate to keep her text messages quiet. But this protective order, don't be disillusioned, will not be able to protect communications between celebrities because that's not protected information. It's not. Highly confidential information is not a conversation between you and your best friend. And in fact, in Discovery, any of your communications between you and whoever is a party to the lawsuit or who's a witness to the lawsuit can become discoverable. It's not confidential that you had a conversation with someone, and the fact that they're trying to make it confidential just because she's famous is a complete abuse of the court system. And I don't expect the judge in this case to allow anything to do with a protective order for hiding communication with celebrities. But something that is bound to get hidden is the mental health and severe psychological issues that are happening in the home of Blake and Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds has been speaking about his debilitating and crippling anxiety for years. Ryan has a very unique way of handling it, by which meaning he doesn't actually take care of it. He meditates and he overbooks himself. He's never once spoken about using medications, going to therapy, taking traditional steps. He uses other means to manage and cope, which don't treat it and don't necessarily make anxiety better. And if it's debilitating, not treating your anxiety can make you spiral out of control and it can turn you into someone you won't even recognize. And at Ryan in 2023, in October of 2023, around the same time all of this crap was going on with Baldoni, around the same time that Baldoni, they decide to accuse Baldoni of sexual harassment and being a predator. Ryan was on a red carpet telling Page Six that his anxiety is so debilitating at times and he doesn't always manage it properly. He admitted that his anxiety and his brain spins out of control. And when he spins out of control, it can be very hard on him and hard on his family. His solution was meditation and overbooking, and that's how he copes with his anxiety. No medication, no therapy. And he even admitted that his mental health in October 11th of 2023 was not very good. If Ryan Reynolds has untreated anxiety, I can tell you because I have GAD. It's called generalized anxiety disorder. I also have ADHD. Spiraling anxiety can make you believe things that aren't true, and it can make you think that there's danger ahead or somebody's done something that they haven't done. It can make you accuse people of being bad who aren't bad. It can make you paranoid. And if Ryan isn't treating his anxiety and he's not taking steps to work with a therapist or manage the panic attacks or the paranoia that comes with it, it can get worse and worse and worse. He has stated in the past that he has used drugs and alcohol to cope. When he was in his 20s, he said he went through a really rough patch where he used drugs and alcohol. And then he had several of his friends die of overdoses, and he said he stopped that life. But he's admitted to substance abuse in the past. During lockdown, he told Stephen Colbert that he basically spent most of his time locked in isolation with a bottle of gin, drunk with his family. On the Wrexham AFC Hulu series, his business partner, Rob, made a comment that while he was doing all of the work, Ryan was probably off being drunk. I think part of the reason they are paranoid about this is that Ryan has spent so many years being an advocate for mental health and saying that it's important that he speaks out. And the truth is that his paranoia, his delusions, which is a part of anxiety, it's also anxiety and delusions also are common with people that have narcissistic personality disorder. It's not rooted in the exact same way, but it's definitely a byproduct of it, especially when they don't feel like they have control. And Ryan doesn't want people to know that when he says that his anxiety gets dark, that he's an angry monster that loses his temper and screams at Justin Baldoni. During the period that Ryan is claiming that his mental health isn't good, and at times is spiraling out of control. There are 2 separate times that he has meltdowns and screams and yells at Baldoni. His first meltdown was on April 2023, where he screamed at Baldoni about, quote, unquote, "fat shaming" his wife when that didn't happen, and he asked him why he would fucking ask about his wife's weight. The next time was on January 4th, 2024. In the span of 7 months, 8 months, he freaked out and yelled at Baldoni, flipped out, and he did it in front of executives at Sony. He did it in front of A-list producers. He did it in front of so many witnesses that there's no way that his story that he didn't yell will pass the sniff test. Ryan has a history of openly speaking about his debilitating anxiety, which isn't going to help their case at all, because part of the case is built on that they have been so irreparably harmed by them that there's pain and suffering. That's how they get the emotional distress, and it's how you're awarded punitive damages. Without that, your award or your judgment wouldn't be as high. It's when you start talking about severely impacting someone, that they are so debilitated that there is serious harm caused to them, then the damages can get in the upwards of millions and millions and millions. But the problem and the thing they were fighting about today that she brought up so many times was about severe psychological and mental illness. Because if Blake and Ryan were already dealing with severe mental illness and having psychological and mental health problems, it'll be extremely challenging for them to claim that their emotional distress now is a byproduct of what happened or what they claim Justin Baldoni did. If they were already being treated for mental illness prior to when all of this was going on, it's going to be a lot harder for them to succeed on punitive damages and emotional distress. My guess is that Blake Lively had postpartum depression. Ryan has anxiety, debilitating anxiety, severe anxiety, and he doesn't treat it. And the 2 of them were spiraling out of control. It was a shitstorm. And if you've seen pictures of him, he has aged a lot. He doesn't really look like himself anymore. And he's been making comments and jokes about using meth and doing coke, which is so weird because he's 47 or 48 years old. And it's apparent that there's severe mental health issues going on here. It doesn't excuse what they're doing, but they don't want Justin or those people to see it, because then if they know that, they know that they didn't cause the problem. And it would further prove that it's their paranoia or their mental illness or their narcissism, because technically speaking, narcissistic personality disorder it's not a mental illness, it's a personality disorder, but it can be treated, not effectively, but it can be treated. And if there's any of these kind of diagnoses for either one of them, that's also going to be a huge problem. That's why they're like desperate to keep it private. I truly believe that these 2 have serious problems in their home. I truthfully believe that Ryan is dealing with some sort of substance abuse problem. That's my opinion, because he's openly spoken about cocaine and meth in the last year. And that's just not something you genuinely joke about. I believe the reason why his attorneys today were desperate to protect the discovery is because Taylor Swift's communications are going to implicate her in a much bigger way. I think they are desperately trying to preserve any relationship they have with her because of the connection they've made and how she's their godmother of their children, which I don't know that there's any salvaging of this friendship anymore. But they know if they go down, Taylor can go down, and they don't want to cause irreparable harm. But the fact that they literally said that the information that would come out of these messages could cause irreparable damage to these careers means that something nefarious happened. At least that's my assumption. And I also believe that they're trying to cover up Ryan's substance abuse and his mental illness and possibly her postpartum depression, which would negate the pain and suffering aspect of this case. There would be no damages because she was already being treated for mental illness. She can't say this made it more because she already had it. If she was being treated before for these issues and then now she's trying to say it's new, you can't do that. And if you can't differentiate where the pain and suffering occurred, you're not going to win it. And it's so hard to win pain and suffering in a case like this. They're desperate to cover up that. They're desperate to cover for Tay, and Taylor's gonna have to answer, and I'm here for it because there's no such thing as America's sweetheart. What are your thoughts, you guys? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. And do you think this is the issue? Tell me all the things. Bye, guys.